The regular meeting of the Mishawaka Common Council for Monday, August 21st, 2023 will please come to order. Good evening, folks. We're happy to see you here this evening. If you would, please take a moment to check your electronic devices to make sure that you have placed them on silent and turn them off, and we appreciate that. And for those of you who are participating remotely, we welcome you as well. Members of the public who are participating remotely are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting, with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in tonight's meeting, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they may wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing the comment, members of the public are once again asked to place their microphone on mute. We thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. With that, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hazen?
Here.
Mr. Belovich?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons? Mrs. DeMade?
Here.
Mr. Compton?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here. For the record this evening, since we have Councilman Hazen participating remotely, we will have all roll call votes on all matters. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of August 7th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have appeal number 2023-18 to the council members of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is the use variance to allow mini storage and developmental variances for setback, fencing, and parking northeast corner of East McKinley and Maplehurst. This appeal is signed by Stoyanov. We also have a letter from the City Plan Commission regarding their recommendations from their August 8th meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Plan Commission was held on the above reference date, at which time the following petitions were considered. Petition number 2023-18, a petition by the City of Mishawaka requesting to vacate the north-south alley located between West Front Street, West First Street, North Spring Street, and North Mill Street. The commission, with a vote of 9-0, recommended approval. Petition number 2023-19, a petition by University Gardens requesting to amend the University Gardens planned unit development, 6910 North Main Street, Granger, to allow for microblading services. The commission, with a vote of 9-0, recommended approval. This is signed by Donna Burkhart, Administrative Planner.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we'll move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-37, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a right-of-way vacation of unimproved alley, north-south alley bounded by Front Street, North Spring Street, West First Street, and North Mill Street.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-37 will be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-38, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to allow microblading in unit number 14 at 6910 North Main Street.
Proposed ordinance 2023-38 will also be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. This evening, we also have no resolutions to consider, so we'll move into ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. The petitioner is requesting postponement until the September 11th meeting.
Mr. Compton.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh, I make a motion to honor the request of the petitioner.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to postpone second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-25 until our regularly scheduled meeting of September 11th, 2023, and this is all at the request of the petitioner. Any additional questions or comments from council? Hearing none, then Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the motion to postpone?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Postponement passes 8-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-29, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is to rezone from C1 to R3 multifamily residential, 2406 Schumacher Drive, and adjacent property.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2023-29, report that they have examined said matter and that their opinion should not be adopted. This is signed by the majority of the committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, then Madam Clerk, would you poll the council on the committee report?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
No.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Belovich.
I made a mistake on that, and I also want to vote in the affirmative. Yes.
The record shall so reflect. Thank you. And with that, we'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-29. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name's Terry Lang from the Whiteman office. Our address is 1402 Mishawaka Avenue in South Bend. I represent the petitioners, the Freed family. The petition before you is a piece of property that is split zoned in the city of Mishawaka. The front portion of it is zoned C1, general commercial use. The back portion of it is zoned R3, immediately adjacent to the Town and Country Estates neighborhood there. The Freed family is looking to rezone this to all R3 such that they could build a series of buildings that would be townhomes set up in a fashion with duplexes and quadplexes. We've met with the neighborhood association multiple times with regards to revisions that they would like to see, and have adopted almost 99% of the things that they had asked for on our plan to create these duplexes. The site plan with regards to the northern portion of it, immediately adjacent to the Town and Country Estates neighborhood, is set up for duplexes and a green space area along the north side. All of the units in the Town and Country Estate neighborhood are all zoned R3 and duplexes, just identical to what we're asking for use here. The southern portion of it, adjacent to the C1 general commercial, is set up for quadplexes there. These units would all be set up on individual lots as the owner has developed them over time. If he so desires to sell them, they could be sold as individual lots or individual buildings. It leaves the options open for the developer at the time if they desire to exit and move on. The surrounding neighborhood, as I had indicated, Town and Country Estates to the north is R3. Immediately to the west, there's a light industrial, there's a factory located immediately to the west. To the east is an R1 neighborhood, the Normain Heights area. And then to the south is the Michiana Chrysler Jeep, multiple franchises that work into that car dealership for that C9 automotive use there. In making multiple revisions to the site plan, we have counted the number of units that we're asking to put on the property. In meeting with the planning department and their staff, they had looked at the plan as well as the full planning commission, looked at it and said, you know, the master plan for the city of Mishawaka was for this property to either be the C commercial or the R3. Normally, you don't like to see property split zoned like this because it creates this kind of problem that has to come before the planning commission as well as the council for a determination as to which of those uses would need to be used. At the Planning Commission stage, when we had met with the Planning Commission members, the discussion took place as to maybe to make this more palatable for the council and for the Planning Commission members. We put together a series of bullet point items that would be a written commitment by the Freed family such that those commitments, and the board members had gotten those emailed to them for that, and we're willing to stick with those commitments and have them recorded as part of the record and for the history of the property. One of the items I think that was a big concern by the residents in the Town and Country Estates was that they were worried that there was going to be an absentee owner of the property with rental units, you know, being unattended. The Freeds are intending to live on site in one of the duplex units as they are developed, as kind of an assurance that there will be somebody on site to be able to watch the property, make sure that, you know, they are being maintained in an orderly fashion and that there's not anything hazardous or obtrusive to the neighborhood around them with regards to that. We had at the Planning Commission stage also had communicated with the City of Mishawaka Engineering Department with regards to the capacity to handle the sewer, the water, and the electric use on the sites, of which all of those came back favorable, that the city had the capacity to add these additional, you know, 6 buildings that we're looking to put onto the site right there. The residential use is the highest and best use of the property. At one of the meetings, one of the very first or second meetings, there was concern, and they didn't like the fact that there were going to be rental units or ownership units, and I think they failed to realize that the property is currently zoned for commercial use. There's 135 possible uses that it could be used for right now, and all of those uses would probably be a lot more impactful to the neighborhood than if it was residentially being used. Concerns with regards to traffic was an issue that came up at the meeting several times. The city is in charge. Those are all dedicated streets in that area right now, and the city is the one that's responsible for controlling traffic. Single-family homes would be, or townhouses that we're proposing for the site right here, would be less of an impact for the neighborhood than if it was commercially used as a hotel or storage units or, you know, strip center, drive-through coffee shops, things like that that would have a continual traffic motion basically all hours of the day. With the owners living on site, they've ensured that the residents in the neighborhood that construction of the units would be least impactful to the area, such that they would be controlled when contractors would be on site. hourly working would be between basically 7 to 5 o'clock, give or take an hour there, with the development of the buildings, so that, construction hours are sometimes determined by the weather. And also, you got to work when you can in some cases to get certain things done schedule-wise. But we're not looking to be a bad neighbor. We're looking to be a good neighbor with them. We had talked about putting a fence up along the northerly side such that that area would be screened by, a fence in there to, minimize the fact that our units are going to be built next door to them. With the use of the property as being residential, we do want to be a good neighbor. I mean, our streets are going to be plowed and maintained by our association that's going to be owners of the site, owners living on site. One of the key things is that I think the board needs the council needs to be aware of is that a split zone piece is something that it shouldn't have happened that way. It has. I can relate to it. I have a piece of property in East of Mishawaka that it's split zoned identically to this with residential and commercial property, and I'll probably have to address that at some time in the future when I do find a buyer for the property. But it's something that with the residential use of the property, I think that's the best be a good neighbor approach, as well as also least impactful to that, and also allows the developer to put in their residential development that would be, there is a shortage of homes and townhomes in the area. And I think quality is something that Mr. Freed's family is looking to bring to the area right there. And if you'd have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lang? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Lang. Thanks for your work and thanks for your email today, or I think it was today, with, the descriptions of the property and things that you were talking about. I just had a question. Can you remind me how many units in total the plan is?
The north half of it will be duplexes. There'll be 3 units on the north side, and then on the south side will be the quadplexes up against the commercial zoned area there. And that plan for that portion of it, I believe there's 3 or 4 on the south side.
So you're talking about 18?
Yes.
Okay. And so so you're talking about maybe 2 cars, let's make kind of an assumption, 2 cars per unit, so you're talking about 36 cars.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you
And-
very much.
And to go along with your question with regards to the number of cars generated, there are 3 accesses south on Schumacher. You could take Leyte to the east, or you can continue west from that same intersection of Schumacher and Leyte out to Grape or Maine or McKinley in either of those directions. So I don't anticipate that everybody would be leaving in the same direction, but it's something that it is a small impact to, in fact, 3 of the busiest streets in the entire city of Mishawaka when you consider Maine, Grape, and McKinley as 3 of the busiest.
Thank you. Mr. Compton?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Lang, could you tell me, I guess I didn't realize that, that this was already partially R2.
R3.
How much of it is R2?
About 25% of it.
Okay.
All right.
R3? R3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Lang? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward to the podium. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And I am not surprised that we have a fair number of people who might be interested in speaking. One of the things that we're going to ask you folks, and we want to hear from all of you, and please feel free to come to the podium But if you can, try to keep your comments as brief as they can so that you're making some germane and relevant points. And then, if someone else makes a point that speaks in front of you or before you that you were going to make, if you can try to cut to the heart of something new that you want to share with us, that would be great. But please all feel free to come up and speak as your heart desires. And with that, ma'am?
My name's Dixie Mason. I live at 329 Imus Court. Lived there for 50 years. Rezoning of the property on Schumacher is something that just doesn't seem to fit for us. Safety is the big issue, one of the big issues. Imus Drive and Leyte have become a shortcut for many between Main Street and Grape Road. The city can't help do anything with our safety issues we have had in the past. I've checked. Nothing can be done in the future, I've been told. Mailboxes have been ran over and replaced. Yards have been repaired from traffic running through them and speeding down Imus. We have had more young families moving in that have kids riding bikes, scooters, and mom and dads walking with smaller kids in strollers. Senior citizens are walking a lot more, some several times a day. If this property stayed zoned as is, most of the businesses have to use McKinley to enter and to exit off of McKinley because they're prohibited from using Imus and Leyte. Market value sounds good. We have concerns with that. We already have some rentals on Main Street that back up to this area of concern. We also have a few rentals in our neighborhood which shows no accountability for ownership. You can tell the rentals from the houses that are owned, not well-maintained, but are market value rentals. By adding additional rental properties to the neighborhood, we will be facing possible market value changes. As longtime homeowners, myself, the concern is real of this addition changing the demographics even more with market value rentals. We love our neighborhood. Yes, changes happen. We embrace positive changes that enhance the surrounding homes. You, our representatives, the council, we are entrusting that you keep our vision of the neighborhood that shows pride and respect of ownership. We would like to see the area remain commercial. That section is already set up for commercial, and there has been no problems with the neighbors. Yes, there is noise. We have that every day. We're between Grape and Main, and there's businesses there on Schumacher, so we do have noise. Yes, we are aware of what might go into the area of concern. Yes, we would rather have ownership in the area, if not it remaining commercial. Commercial tax development could create more in property tax revenue, depending on the business that would go in there. That's good for the city. So I'm asking you to vote no, please.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Mason? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Hi, Mrs. Mason.
Hi.
Thank you very much for your comments. I had a question, two questions. One, you talked about prohibited traffic on,
Those are trucks.
so
Are-
trucks are
Yes,
prohibited on
Yes.
Leyte, but
yes.
any other car or vehicle that is visiting a business along Schumacher is welcome to travel through.
That is correct.
Okay.
We don't get a lot of that, though.
My other question is regarding rentals versus ownership. If these units that were being built as homeowner occupied units, would you have the same concern as you do with rental units?
We're totally against rentals. Home ownership would be preferable, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mrs. Mason?
Hey.
False alarm. I guess nobody has any questions
All
for you.
right,
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? If you would, please come forward.
Hi, my name's Marjorie White. I live at 115 Redwood Court, Town and Country Estates. I'm here on behalf of our president, Nick Brenner, who was in California. I will paraphrase some of the things. He's given me a long thing to read, but I won't read it all. Although there have been some concessions made on the part of the developer to try to ease some of the concerns, it's just not enough to sway the people in favor. All of the residents on Leyte are extremely opposed to this development. This is from Nick. I have been communicating their opinions and concerns throughout the entire process, and they are happy to know that their opinions are being weighed. Without exception, everyone feels the current use is best use of the property rather than having it rentals. We would prefer homeowners or commercial property. We did have a recent meeting with the developer. They provided us with clarification on several issues. I went back to the homeowners and presented them with that information, but we are just too far apart with what the residents feel comfortable with. Ultimately, I believe the homeowners of the neighborhood would agree to properties for sale, not for rent. If any of you would like to chat with me about this more, please send me an email or you can text me and I'll be back to you as soon as I can. Unfortunately, I'm in Fresno and there is a time difference.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Nancy Zawacki, and I live at 2709 Schumacher Drive. I'm a homeowner and have lived on Schumacher Drive for 22 years. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to physically look at this property because it's a pretty unique situation. Hopefully you did that before you cast your vote. Our neighborhood consists of single-family homes and duplexes, which are in town and country. And all that was spoken previously, he was always talking about town and country. But there's 3 streets here. There's Schumacher that I live on, there's Imus, there's Lenson. And these are all homes, ownerships. We do have a few rentals. So that's another dynamic to just town and country. Really, no more apartments are needed in this area. Less than a mile from where they're proposing this, there are currently 4 apartment complexes. 3 are on Main Street, and that's Addison Apartments, Williamsburg Apartments, Remington Court, and there's one on Grape Road, Runaway Bay. And what that amounts to a total of 1,208 apartments, less than a mile from where we are. Our neighborhood was built in the 1960s, and the mayor frequently talks about preserving historic Mishawaka. Now, I'm not saying that 1960 homes are historic. However, I feel that being 60 years old in a neighborhood, it's worth preserving as it is. It's a unique situation where it's a combination of residential and these couple commercial properties. And so far, as long as the 22 years I've been living there, I've never had any problem whatsoever. The single-family homes on Schumacher Drive, Imus Drive, and Lenson would be impacted by this apartment development. I thought it was 20, but I guess they've lowered it now down to 18. But if they wouldn't be impacted, why by I don't know if it's an ordinance or a law, were legal notices sent out to 6 homes that are on Imus and also to 2 homes on Schumacher. So obviously, with that ordinance, there was going to be some kind of impact. And I guess I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it. I also have a question. Why one person who now owns this property at 2406 Schumacher Drive, why would that person's right to build something kind of overtake all the people that live here? And that includes all the homeowners on Schumacher, like myself, on Imus, on Lenson, and of course in town and country. I think it's been pretty obvious that in general, the people in this neighborhood, they are against this development. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward.
I'm Gordy Corum, 2739 Lenson Drive. First thing I'd like to say is, if you own the same kind of property with the split thing, build it on your property then. Why put it over there if you have the same issue? Obviously, we all want it to be homes for sale, not for rent. You're going to keep up your homes. You're not going to keep up rental properties. I'm not going to say the owner's not going to do that. The individuals won't do that. If it's individually owned, they're all going to keep up their properties because you're going to pay a lot of money for them. You're not just going to let them run into the dirt, you know? It's a great neighborhood. We'd like to leave it like it is, the best we can. That's all I had to say about it.
Thank
Good?
you.
Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Thank you,
I'd
sir.
say he's got the same property, right? That's what he said. He's got the same property with the split thing. He wants
Duly
it
noted.
that bad,
Thank-
tell him to build it on his property.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, if you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Compton?
I want to thank the neighbors for coming out and speaking. There was a concerted effort. I've been on the council for 17 years. I've not gotten as many phone calls on any one issue. And we've been through some big issues. I'm disappointed. I think this is the perfect scenario for that property. That's my personal opinion. I think it is a perfect buffer between commercial and residential. I think there's a number of rentals in the neighborhood that you live in, and that maybe even some of the people that come up here tonight are renters, are not homeowners. So personally, that's how I feel. If this were a issue of the greater good, in other words, making a decision for the greater good of Mishawaka, opposed to an opinion or a desire of the citizens, I would vote for it, but it's not. I'm going to vote against this, but I do know that there's a new homeowner, or a new landowner there. And I know that this property has sat vacant for a long time. It is not going to sit vacant. There will be something there. I hope that it is a situation that the people who live the closest, the Town and Country Estates folks, the ones who live the closest, the ones who will really be impacted by this, won't be disappointed. Because it could be much more disruptive in your lives, in safety, in traffic, than what an apartment building would be. And we need apartments. I know there's a lot of them, but watch the news and watch what's out there. They're in huge demand. And this type of an apartment, not like what we have down here, which are high-end, but workforce housing. So I'll leave it at that. I don't mean to, I just want to express my opinion, is what I want to do. But I will follow the lead of, in this case, the lead of the citizens and their requests, and I appreciate you making your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Other questions or comments? Mr. Mamalante?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if I had permission to ask, and I'm just going to pick on Mrs. Mason to come up, if I could ask her a quick question.
Mrs. Mason, would you like to answer a question for Mr. Mamalante?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry to pick on you,
No
but I know
problem.
that you've been the voice
Mr. Lang,
of
if you
several
could, why
people.
don't you go ahead and take a seat?
Pardon?
Mr. Lang, if you want to take a
You
seat?
can stand next to me, I don't mind. I don't bite.
Well, actually, I would prefer that Mr. Lang took a
Oh,
seat.
okay.
I know you guys have had several meetings with the developer, et cetera, and in this packet, as Mr. Lang had mentioned, there are several businesses or different types of companies that could come to this location. Are you and all the other residents fully aware of?
We are. We were given a list
Okay.
at one time, and we did look those over. Yes.
Ma'am, I appreciate it.
I just wanted to make sure, because I
We
mean,
were.
there are some things,
Yes.
some rare
We are.
choices that could be on this. Okay.
We are.
Just want to make sure. Okay, thank you, that's all I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mrs. Mason before she sits down again? Another false alarm, sorry. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Not at the council stage, only at the plan commission stage, Mr. Lang, but as long as you're going to be brief, I will ask you to come to the podium and briefly address any points that you want to make.
Well, I have three things, very short and sweet. In sending out the notices to everybody that was within 300 feet, according to the guidelines, I had the pleasure of pulling the names of everybody in Town and Country Estates. About 20% to 25% live outside the area. Addresses were out of state or out of city. So there are rentals there. Why are the taxes going other places? But,
Folks,
okay, that's what we're trying to
Mr.
avoid.
Lang, if you'd pause for a minute. Folks, I understand your passion, but let's continue to conduct an orderly meeting. We appreciate your comments, but let's let Mr. Lang have a chance to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Also, with regards to rental homes or townhouses, as Ms. Vogler had asked, my daughter's currently looking for a home to rent. One of the local real estate companies that rents a lot of homes is Realty Plus on Grape Road. The waiting list for home rentals that they currently have is 150 families are on that waiting list right now for this type of home, townhome that we're looking for right now. So, and last I'd like to say is, nobody likes development next door to them. I went through it when I lived at a different location than I do right now. But the thing is, you have to weigh the pros and the cons of those things that could go there, the things that you know that we could put there. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lang? Thank you, sir. Then we are back at the stage where the floor is open for questions or comments from the council. Mr. Mamalenti.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to take this time to make a quick little comment, very similarly to Mr. Compton's, and I wanted to thank Mr. Compton and specifically and the other folks that took a lot of their time into meeting with the constituents, with going to meetings with the developer and the residents as well. I want to thank the neighbors for their tireless efforts to contact all of us, either via phone or email. Your efforts were duly noted. And I think, you know, as we sit in this position here, this is, as Mr. Compton had mentioned, we're put in a tough situation where the greater good of the city and also listening to the residents. And in my opinion, this is a tough call, but I think, you know, this is government 101. This is what this is all about. So I appreciate your efforts, stressing your concerns. I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of what could potentially go in this area if this were turned down this evening, and you are. I just hope that if that is the case, it is something favorable and you guys can tolerate it, and we don't get phone calls saying, why did you put this in here? Why did you put this in here, et cetera. So I do probably think this development is the best for the city in this area, but I'm going to listen to you guys and your passion, and I will not be in favor of this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Mr. Belovich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've lived in Blair Hills for 41 years, and I was on the board of Blair Hills for about 10 years. And it's great to see people come out the way you are this evening, but I've heard some comments about rentals. And I just want to advise the group here that we have a department that if something isn't right, if a structure is deteriorating, if grass is 15 inches high, I would ask you to pick up your phone and call code enforcement. They're very responsive, and they will come out if you call. And we have 5 people that are full-time, that are dedicated to that department, so let's utilize them, please.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. I just wanted to say I've been going back and forth about this a lot. I think, you know, when somebody purchases property and they want to do their best and develop something that seems to be good business for them and what they think would be good situation for the community surrounding them, I sympathize and support development in Mishawaka. I have to say, though, looking at that zoning, the current zoning, and looking at the factory that's across the street from this proposed area, and looking at the list of things that could go in there, which to me appear to be fairly soft commercial, I think the zoning is appropriate, and I'll be voting, I'm not in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beninky?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for clarification, maybe Mr. Triple can help me with this. If this is voted down this evening, is it like a one-year period before they could bring it back for the exact same thing? But if it's something slightly different, it's got to be different in nature, it could come back. So even if this is voted down today, this could come back in a year. This is not no forever, this is just no for now. So,
Let me see if I can read your mind, Mr. Prince. I believe that the phrase is, it cannot be substantially the same. So it's not a slight change, but it can't be the same proposal that's repackaged. Did I read your mind or not, Mr. Prince? But Mr. Beninky has actually accurately stated the time frame, as did Mr. Triple. So if in fact there's a no vote this evening by a majority of the council, that 12-month period starts to click as of tonight before the same project could be brought back through the process.
thank you.
Mr. Prince, since you had your hands up, I'm going to ask you if you have anything that you'd like to share with us.
Mr. President, thank you for the indulgence. I just wanted to let everyone here know, because not everybody's here knows the procedure of how things happen. So this is a hearing item before the council because of the requested change in zoning. But for example, and I don't think a hotel is going to go on this property, but for example, by right, they can put a hotel on this property and it would not come before council. It would only come before the planning commission. So literally, if they had somebody interested in building a hotel and this were turned down this evening, they could apply, they could build a hotel, there would be no hearing, there would be no notice, there would be no public meeting. It would be merely a matter of submitting the site plan before the planning commission. If it meets our ordinance requirements, it would be approved. So I just wanted to let everybody aware of that. If something starts being constructed on that property, that's how the process works based on the zoning. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr.
I
Prince?
do have a question.
Mr. Compton?
Go ahead. Mr. Prince, this has split zoning. So if a commercial business wanted to come in there, would we have to rezone to make the property completely commercial?
Only if they were going to be using all the property as commercial. They could very easily use the current residentially zoned property for a retention pond or that type of thing, and fit it under the current zoning. I mean, I need to look at the rules relative to that split zoning, but.
Well, my concern is
Right.
whatever might be planned to be there, a whole different group of the neighbors would come out and be opposed to a business. So, you know, it kind of locks this into nothing.
Right, so I don't know if the
I mean, that
IT
could
department
happen,
can
is
put
what
that up in terms of a map, but that residentially zoned property is actually part of the wooded area, and in the current proposal, I believe a good portion, if not all of it, was going to be proposed as remaining open space
Yeah.
because of the location. It's a difficult area to get to, so I don't think it has much viability whatsoever in terms of commercial use. So I really think that area, because of the way the utilities, you can see part of it, it's just that triangle. So part of it is being used for retention, the other part of it was designated as a wooded, just keeping the existing woods in that location. And the area between the two of it, you can see the lines that cross it, that's a utility line that crosses there. So there's very little potential for development on that. They have as the current design has it laid out, it's very logical in terms of that approach of the two different zonings of property. So if you can imagine the real commercial developed area, the area that's zoned commercial, that would be the commercial development on this plan rather than the duplexes and quadplexes.
So looking at this, the retention pond area is what is roughly, I'm not, you know, I don't-
The retention pond and the area, the triangle that kind of bleeds up to the northeast.
yeah, and that's
Correct.
the area that's,
That's the area that's zoned residential currently, correct?
thank you.
Other questions from Mr. Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we are back at the stage for questions or comments from the council.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr.
I wasn't
President.
sure if that was waving the pen at me or you wanted the floor,
Thank you,
Mrs. DeMid.
President. Before all of this, for the last couple of months, I have been through both neighborhoods, both the town and country, and the neighborhood directly to the west of the town and country. I've knocked on every door, and I've spoke to as many residents there in each community as would open the door. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate having your feelings and your worries and your concerns and your hopes for this property told to me. And as a person who is strong on the rights of property owners, I think this is it's a hard choice for me as well as it is for Mrs. Volker. But I am going to be I'm going to be voicing my opinion for the residents. Because you have taken the time and the effort and you have such passion about your neighborhoods, it is a good thing. And I was told by several of your neighbors that, well, there's nothing we can do. You know, the council's already made up their mind, or this is the way it's going to be. And now you know that that's not always the truth. That's not always the way things work. You do have a voice, and I appreciate you letting us know.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? Then I will add that I also will be voting no this evening. I do want to acknowledge the significant effort that the developer made to not only put together the written commitments, but to meet and to try to address the concerns of the surrounding neighborhood. I wish that would have happened sooner in the process, and perhaps we'd be looking at a different outcome here. But however we got to this point, we did get to this point. And I, like others, see some value in this proposal. The underlying landowner, at some point in time, has to be allowed the opportunity to build something there. I suspect that the vast majority of us would agree with that. Whether this is the right project or not is the question before us. But at some point in time, something has to be allowed to be developed and built there. But in my mind, what we have heard this evening, what we have heard from the residents, and I also want to congratulate those of you who work the neighborhood and shared information with your neighbors and asked them to reach out to us. I'm not sure if I've not received more phone calls in the past, but this is right up there. You're in the top 5, if nothing else, folks, with regard to your outreach to us. So you're to be congratulated for that. More to the point, these matters in my mind don't always simply boil down to a show of hands and a preference on the part of the neighborhood. That's important, and that's a piece of the puzzle, but as has been referenced, we also have to look at what's in the best interest of the community as a whole. And that's where I do see some value in this proposal. However, winding it my way back to the findings that we have to make anytime that we're going to rezone a property, in this instance, the fact that those buildings that lie on Schumacher are solely commercial and industrial in nature leads me to believe that it is the highest and best use of this property to remain commercial. So for the here and now, based on this proposal, I'm going to be voting against it. But it's with the understanding that at some point in time, the developer needs to have the ability to receive some return on their investment, and we'll see what the future holds. So, if there are no other questions or comments from the council, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
No.
Mr. Belovich?
No.
Mr. Mamalenti?
No.
Mr. Benicki?
No.
Mrs. DeMade?
No.
Mr. Compton?
No.
Mrs. Volker?
No.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
No.
The proposal fails 8-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-31. This is an ordinance to establish 1202 East Mishawaka Avenue as a local historic landmark within the city of Mishawaka, Indiana.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2023-31, report that they have examined said matter and in their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the majority of the committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the committee report?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Committee report passes 8-0.
Thank you. We'll now move into second reading of public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-31. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
I'm Krista Hill. I'm the senior planner with the Department of Community Development and Planning, but my role tonight is as the secretary of the Historic Preservation Commission. So the Historic Preservation Commission heard this at our July meeting, and we recommended unanimously in a favorable recommendation to the council. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Luann Welsh and Mr. Brent Spring, the owners, and also to Ms. Frankie Spring, who I believe is participating tonight via the WebEx or the call-in system, at just the amount of time and effort that went into putting the petition together. There's a lot of lovely pictures, there's a lot of detail. She is the entire ownership from when the house was built to now, just a lot of the details that went into that. So I just wanted to thank them for wanting to preserve their home.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Luann Welsh, and I'm married to Brent Spring, the owner of 1202 East Mishawaka Avenue, and I'd like to speak in favor of 1202 being designated as a local historic landmark. The exterior of the house at 1202 has changed very little since it was built in 1928. It's a good example of colonial revival architecture. No additions have been made to the structure. The most significant change being the replacement of the original green tile roof to a shingled roof in the 1960s due to a fire that was contained to an upstairs bedroom and the attic. Pictures obtained of the house in the late 30s and early 40s show the facade of the house the same, even down to the knocker on the front door. Beginning with the first owner in 1928, the house has been owned by some hardworking and remarkable Mishawakans. 4 of the 6 previous owners were business people with businesses located in Mishawaka, with a 5th being the principal of Mishawaka High School. And if that weren't enough, the Gates family confirmed what many neighbors have told us for years, that Billy Graham performed his first wedding ceremony in our house. The neighborhood where 1202 sits is an old neighborhood, one filled with charming, well-cared-for properties. It's important to preserve the history and architecture of these old houses for future generations. We will not be the first house in the area to be designated as a historic landmark. And if you agree to confirm this designation, I'm confident that it won't be the last. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? I suspected, Mr. Mamalati, that you'd have at least one.
Well, thank you. Not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. Good to see you and Brent. Just want to commend you guys both on all the years of extreme hard work. You guys, every time I drive by, you're doing some yard work and hard work and just maintaining that property to near perfection. So just want to say congratulations to you both, and hope this passes. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If so, please come forward.
Good evening, I'm Brent Spring. I'm the listed owner of the house, so I figured I should get up here and throw my 2 cents in. You know, since we first walked into that house, just prior to our wedding, we walked in, and Luann looks up the staircase and says, "We don't need to look any further." And I said, "Well, that's not how you buy a house." She said in front of a realtor. So, but, you know, she has done most of the pushing and working and pushing me into doing all the things to keep it the way it is. And, you know, we're in the process right now of investing in redoing the front porch because the concrete has started to settle and I'm not sure what you call it, but the columns, but even the roof of the porch is starting to sag a little bit. So that's being done. We tore out the bricks, going to reuse the bricks that were in there, and then the next process is having the windows redone, restored, not redone, because we have the original windows in all the house except for the room where the fire was. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Mrs. Volker?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I don't want to be redundant with comments, but the, you know, the sweat equity that you put in to the house with, you know, all the hard work over the years just really shows. And one of the things, you know, we were talking about rental properties with the last matter that came before us, and, you know, pride of homeownership really shows, and pride of Mishawaka history really shows, and it's important that we, as a community and as individuals, recognize the history in our community and that we take care of our properties so that we remain the wonderful city that we are. And it, you know, the history sometimes seems so, it doesn't seem important. You know, there's so many other things that seem bigger than that, but when it comes to walking a neighborhood and seeing a beautiful home, what you do is you are maintaining your property, you're recognizing and honoring the historic nature of your property, not just the architecture of the property, but also the, you know, many families, prominent families that have lived there, and you uphold your neighborhood by doing that. So I just thank you for being willing to do that and for the hard work that you put into, and Frankie, I think, put into putting the document together so that we could get to this point.
Yes, she did a lot of hard work for the board. Thanks.
Anything else from the council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? If you would, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone with us this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come
Wait,
forward.
she wants to talk. Frankie just appeared.
Sorry, I had to turn on my video.
That's okay.
I'm Frankie. I'm Frankie Spring. I'm the daughter of Brent and Luann, and I prepared the application, so I figured I would also speak in favor. I think my mom said most of the things about the history of the house. I just wanted to add that it was a really fun experience to prepare the application, and it taught me a lot of new things about the history of the house. I'm happy to know, and I'm a writer. I'm in grad school for writing, and I was happy to provide my expertise, I guess, to help this application happen.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, Frankie. Good to see you again. Now, is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak in opposition? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mrs. Volker?
Thanks. I just wanted to add one thing. Krista, I want to thank you for everything that you do for the Historic Preservation Commission, but putting together the documentation that is required for designating an historic landmark is meticulous, and to me would be daunting and mind-boggling. So I really appreciate the work that you have done on this one and the work that you did on the landmark that we had recently, and all the meticulous work that you do for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? And if there are none, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 8-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-35, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, establishing a designated outdoor refreshment area.
Mr. Compton? Oh,
I
I'm sorry, Mrs. Volker.
Oh,
No, Mrs. Volker.
go. Well, thank you. I see that that there is a postponement requested for this ordinance, and I would like to suggest that we do just that.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to postpone second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-35 until our regularly scheduled meeting of September 11th, 2023. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Then hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the motion to postpone?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Postponement passes 8-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-36, an ordinance amending Chapter 50 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Parks and Recreation Ordinance of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is amending the municipal code for the DORA.
Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. And once again, I see that there is a request for postponement for this ordinance, and I would like to request that we do just that.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to postpone second reading of public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-36 until our regularly scheduled meeting of September 11th, 2023. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the motion to postpone?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Postponement passes 8-0.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move into privilege of the floor, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to come to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor.
Jeffrey Miller, 321 West 7th Street. I'd like to announce the West End Neighborhood Watch will be meeting on September 6th. That's Wednesday, September 6th, at 7 o'clock here in City Hall. Our guest speaker is Judge John Broden of St. Joseph County Circuit Court. And while we do focus generally on the West End, all Mishawaka residents are welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else with us this evening who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Hearing no one, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Then if there is no new business, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.